Greetings, Whovians, and welcome to Timey Wimey Review. At the time of recording, it's been just over 4 months since the Season 2 finale, The Reality War, was first broadcast. And yes, it's not the most perfect season finale, but I did enjoy it. I definitely had some rose-tinted glasses on with it being on the big screen and just getting suckered in with the special effects and just how the story unfolded and the big surprise at the end. So I gave it quite an impressive rating. But 4 months has passed and a lot has changed and not changed in the Hooniverse. We're still in a state of flux for the main status of the show. We still don't even know if Disney are still going to be involved beyond 2026. We've had mixed reactions to the last images that were seen on screen with the introduction of Billy Piper. Well, don't worry, we'll get to that. And yeah, and just all sorts of different sort of tiny news articles come from there. So in terms of Ncuti Gatwa saying that this was a 2-year plan, maybe not. Russell T Davies saying that they don't have any clue of what's going on after season 2, and just everything else in between. So I thought it would be a good idea to revisit and review this season 2 finale and see if it still has the TARDIS rating of 8 out of 10. So sit back, relax, hit the subscribe button as I try to get at least 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2025. This is my revisited review of Doctor Who: The Reality War. Jumping straight to the beginning of this episode, I have to give credit to how they figured out the conclusion to the cliffhanger for Wishworld, with the Doctor plunging to his death. And then this magical door appears, and then we get Anita rescuing the Doctor. We always talk about on Doctor Who, or I definitely talk about a lot, about cliffhangers for Doctor Who. And there are some stellar cliffhangers. Some are great, some are not so great as well. But we never really talk about the sort of the aftermath or the fallout to that said cliffhanger. How did the Doctor get out of this situation? And most of them is kind of a bit irrelevant. It's all about the cliffhanger. But I'm glad that there has been time and thought being made of how the Doctor gets out of this cliffhanger. It's very rare to see that and be quite satisfactory. But yeah, I have to give credit of how this cliffhanger concluded. And absolutely, it was great to see Steph Dewelly back as Anita, last seen in the Christmas special Joy to the World. Obviously, she's now in charge of the Time Hotel. Present reality is affecting the future reality in that Time Hotel. And it was a nice sort of like quick whirlwind catch up to what Anita has been up to, being this manager, and also trying to pursue the Doctor throughout different periods of his lifetimes. I always found it quite amusing that she opened a door to see the third Doctor being tied up and basically brainwashed or tortured by the Daleks, and she just slams the door, go, nope, he's not my Doctor, not getting involved in that one. But yeah, had to tug on the heartstrings with the scene where she finds her Doctor dancing with Rogue, and yeah, it all just kind of clicks onto there. I like the emotional weight of it, but if you really think about it a bit too hard, you sort of can pick plot holes in that of like, obviously Anita spent a whole year with the Doctor in the Christmas special. Surely you would have figured out that might not be the guy that who will fall in love with her. But I like the sentiment nonetheless. And she's pregnant as well. So yeah, when I first watched the episode, there was a lot of bit of like, oh, okay, so she kind of it didn't transfer very well to screen. That it kind of felt like she went on a rebound, met this guy, and just got pregnant. I don't think that's actually what happened in my sort of canon. That there's a lot more sort of time difference between her love of the Doctor and her new love. And FYI, she Steph Dewelly was pregnant at the time of that being shot and recorded, so that's why that kind of all got fit into the storyline. So again, fair play for RTD to add that in. Jumping into the episode proper, and the Doctor is basically figuring out that this is not the proper reality, and there's a bit of a call to arms for all of his friends and unit as he kind of snaps them out of the reality. And Ncuti definitely had some really good presence in this episode. particularly with him wearing back his outfits. Again, a bit flamboyant, a little bit cheesy, but that's his character, and that was, it was a joy to see. It made me smile. Got no issues with that. It just made me laugh though when Kate Stewart was doing a bit of a call to arms for all the rest of the unit team, and they're all tagged or chipped. So it was not quite like the bat signal. It wasn't quite like the Thundercats ho with all the rest of the Thundercats with their eyes light up and they go running into action. No, all the unit people are kind of chipped. And yeah, I did kind of like Shirley sort of bezzing off in a wheelchair. Yeah, I don't know how the sort of the effects would have worked on that one. And obviously Ruby turning up and Colonel Ibrahim and Mel. Mel having time to change her hairdo and her hairstyle back to the 80s perm before she come roaring into in a moped. So yeah, it's cheesy fun, but again, you can pick holes at it. Don't think too long because we've got a proper chat going off where kind of borrowing off a little bit of Avengers Endgame, in my opinion, where they had to get reality back to normal, but without the sacrifice of Poppy, because this is in the Doctor and Belinda believe that they had a child together, so whatever happens, we must protect Poppy. Whereas the Rani and Mrs. Flood, they come speaking to the Doctor and unit, with one of the unit soldiers. I think it was Colonel Ibrahim actually, just kind of stood there with his kind of either arms folded or his arms front like that kind of thing. No weapon stances or anything like that. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Again, just a little bit of sort of better blocking would have, made that scene a little bit more real, a little bit more tense, if anything. Because the dialogue was a little bit weak with with Mel saying about the Rani, she's evil and coerce, and I can't remember the exact lines. I just try and pop them out of my head. But yeah, it just kind of takes you out of that scene a little bit. But not as much as finding out that the Time Lords are barren. That's new. I don't remember that being mentioned before. I don't know if that was kind of like a bit of an aftermath from the Timeless Child story arc between the Master and the 13th Doctor and the Cyber Masters, or if it was something, maybe just a new sort of story arc for the Time Lords. Maybe that's kind of the sacrifice of them becoming Time Lords and regenerating, is that they cannot have any children. So yeah, not sure what I kind of get for that sort of bit of extra news. But if you know a bit more, let me know in the comments, please, my fellow Whovians, because yeah, that's the head scratcher for me. But let's battle commence with the Doctor and his friends stopping the Ranis, Conrad, from resurrecting Omega and trying to restore Gallifrey in their own weird image. So the Doctor's got his mission to infiltrate the big bone tower, whilst units are fighting off the bone beasts. Ruby using Project Indigo to transport herself to Conrad to get the wishing baby. We've got Shirley shooting some weapons with Rose Noble Temple sort of typing away and doing some bits and bobs. I did like actually how they brought back Rose for this one. I did like the dialogue of Conrad just doesn't think basically trans people should exist, so he out of his mind he goes, and it's really sad that he thinks that way, and people do think that way. But I did like that introductory reason of why Rose was missing from Wishworld. It's just a shame again for Yasmin Finney that they didn't utilize Rose at all. It was very blink and you miss it. You had one scene, and that was the same from the season 1 finale. You've got this wonderful actress and you're not really doing much with her since being introduced in the Star Beast. So that is a shame that that's happened. But I'm sort of digressing there. So yeah, we've got that happening. Anita is holding the door open to let time flow in. From the Q&A that I saw with Steph DeWally when I went to Hooverville, she was there. Very lovely lady as well. She was saying that that was kind of just the original script. Whether there was other things that was written for her before the production team knew that she was pregnant, she wasn't privy to. But yeah, that was kind of like that was just the original sort of idea for Anita. So you had all this going off. Obviously, Kate Stewart, and Colonel Ibrahim sort of leading the charge and defending the unit tower against the Bone Beast. Brilliant battle, I might add. Susan Triad building up some wonderful devices to keep Poppy safe, and we've got Belinda in a box. Got Belinda in a box looking after Poppy with, with us basically saying, my battle is protecting my daughter. I get that, but what a waste of a character for Belinda. And this is, definitely one of the flaws for this episode is the characterization from Belinda. From where we started, from season 2 to where it ended, it's just like top heavy, just gone wrong somewhere. She was a really interesting character. I loved the dynamic of her being like a reluctant traveler. It just gave me shades of Tegan back in the 80s. And this is nothing against Varida Sethu. I thought she was a great actress. Really enjoyed her performance and her time on Doctor Who, but I just felt like her character got absolutely wasted towards the end of the season. Just didn't quite fit for me. If anything, it just showed a bit more evidence where I feel that Belinda and Ruby's characters should just merge into one. If anyone was going to have a child, should have been Ruby. Should have been Ruby with the Doctor and Poppy, and having their minds sort of messed around. But obviously, we kind of had this character. It just felt like towards the end of the season that the two characters just got merged into one. But on a positive note, I thought the battle looked absolutely gorgeous. Some great special effects there for Doctor Who. Don't get me wrong, it's always should be quality over quality of storytelling, quality of character-driven moments. Should always take precedence over special effects, because that's, for me, is the magic for Doctor Who. And I feel that that's kind of flip-flopped a bit in the R2D2 era, to be brutally honest. But I can't deny how brilliant that scene of the Doctor on the Rani's space bike thing, zooming around, dodging all the lasers and the attacks from the Bone Beasts, with that glorious music by Murray Gold. It was, again, a fantastic theme for the 15th Doctor. Just weren't utilised as much as I hoped it was going to be, because I don't think 15th Doctor didn't have that sort of action call to arms moments as much as I think he should have done. But yeah, that scene was great. The icing on the cake for me would have been brilliant is like if the 15th Doctor put on like some kind of tracking device or like a detonator on one of the Bone Beasts for Colonel Ibrahim or one of the unit members to fire with their laser cannon, and that would have caused a massive explosion and let the Bone Beast collapse. If he was able to sort of do some kind of wonderful space bike trick whilst getting to the Bone Tower, that would have been the mwah for me for that scene. But never mind, he crashes into the Bone Tower, and that helps Ruby transport and take on Conrad. And then we have this big reveal of Omega. And yeah, I know many people were a big fan of the arrival of Omega, or what we saw on screen for Omega. Lisa wasn't a crazy looking dog like Sutek from season 1. For me, I kind of went in with low expectations with Omega, because I just knew, knowing what we was kind of building up to with Wish World, and then just having the inkling of where I think some of the story was going to go for this finale, and everything else that we kind of built up, and we only had like an hour and 10 minutes. Something's got to give, and I knew that Omega was going to be it. So I went in there with low expectations, knowing that Omega's not going to be in it that much, and I did kind of overhype myself in what I envisioned Omega to be, which is basically Peter Davison. I wanted Peter Davison to be back to be Omega, as we last saw when Omega used the Fifth Doctor's image as a doppelganger in the episode, in the story Arc of Infinity. So it would have been great when the Omega's tomb was opened and we just saw the Fifth Doctor. That what a wasted opportunity! Could have easily happened. I don't know why RTD went into, unless this was a Disney thing. I don't know. Bit like sort of Belinda and Barada Sethu. Sorry, Belinda and Ruby. I don't know if that was like a Disney exec saying, "Oh, we want a new companion." They weren't quite happy with Ruby for whatever reason. I'm just speculating there. There's nothing concrete for that one, but I'm just wondering if that was another sort of Disney note that RTD had to abide to. But anyway, back to Omega and the big sort of giant skeleton thing that came out. Yeah, I would have had Peter Davison come out and maybe probably turn into a some kind of skeletal beast to wipe out the Rani. I did like the two Ranis joke from Mrs. Flood, and I'm glad that Anita Dobson survived and to fight another day as the Rani. I hope she comes back because I thought Anita was just lighting up every scene, and you can just tell she was loving being involved in Doctor Who. Again, very lucky to have met Anita Dobson earlier this year at the MCOM at Nottingham, the MCOM Comic Con. And if you want to have a look at that, check that out on the Time Wimey YouTube channel, as well as the Whoville, where I met Steph Diwali, and there's a nice Q&A with her on there. So do check that out at your own leisure. But yeah, I'm glad that Anita Dobson survived. I hope she comes back. I really, really do. I think Mrs. Flood time should not end. And if anything, I hope she either turns up with the Master or something. Sacha Dhawan's Master. That'll be a nice odd pairing. Let me know what you think in the comments. But if I was going to do that scene with Omega, I probably would have just changed slightly on the approach of that. Like I said, I would have had Peter Davison back as Omega. I think the fans would have absolutely loved that and just would have gone chomping at the bit of that one. I would have had the Rani obviously saying that she's going to control Gallifrey using Omega's power, to which he turns into this big monster and gobbles her up. Fine, that's okay. But and then I would have used the Doctor blasting Omega back into his tomb with the Vindicator. I know there was a bit of controversy with using this big blasting gun, where apparently RTD said that the reason why he changed the design of the sonic screwdriver because he didn't want the Doctor pointing it like a gun. I don't know how true that is. Again, let me know in the comments if that's an actual true statement from RTD. But anyway, I would have had the Doctor blast through there because it was a cool moment. It was a really, really cool moment. But midway through blasting him, I would have turned him back to Peter Davison, Omega, and just say along the lines of, I will return. This is not, you haven't seen the last of me. You will pay for this reality. And then the door closes. And then that just gives a bit of a better sort of option of, okay, quick defeat there. But, maybe sort of Omega's just saying that even though I'm not in my strongest form, I can still overpower you. And that's when he gobbles the Varani and turns into big old rusty Skeletor. So maybe a sort of a weakened Omega only to come back to take on another Doctor another day. Battle has been won. Ruby conquered Conrad, and I really liked the scene actually between Ruby and Conrad. I did say in my previous review of this, my spoiler talk, that Ruby was wasted, but yeah, on reflection, no, that was a nice little story arc for Ruby. And I'm glad that to be fair, we didn't just drop Ruby throughout season 2. She was definitely a core character for this season. Again, really enjoyed Millie Gibson's performance. I think she just went on from strength to strength. I hope it's not the last we see of Ruby, and I hope Millie Gibson has a great career ahead of her. And that's the same for Verida Seathu as well, and everyone really involved in Doctor Who, particularly Ncuti Gatwa as well. But yeah, the scene between her and Conrad was some good stuff, some touching moments, and yeah, just had that nice sort of full circle story arc for Conrad. Conrad again wasn't overly explored to its full potential, but I think that was just in terms of just how big these 2 episodes were. It's just fitting it all in. Really, I would have. This should have been a trilogy of episodes. We should have had more time on Conrad's wish world and just getting into his psyche a bit more, and just seeing all of our favorite characters in just all different plights that was kind of touched upon in wish world, but yeah, could have been really stretched out, particularly when they're talking about anyone with disabilities being the down and outs. There's so much could have been explored there. And I know obviously they only had like a limited budget and limited set time, and I'm not sure which story I would sacrifice, or which episode I would sacrifice for this 3rd episode, but I felt that was needed, or at the very least make them an hour long. This was my main sort of gripe with season 2. These episodes should have been at least an hour long. I know the finale was an hour and 10, an hour and 15, which definitely made a lot of difference in terms of just fleshing out some of the story plot points, fleshing out a bit more time with these characters, and have the emotional driven sort of moments with these characters, and just stop and taking a breather made things so much better. It was a breath of fresh air seeing that. Needed more of it, particularly for this season, but I just feel like if the episodes from season 2 were an hour long, would have made such a difference, and it would have probably easily made sense from a financial aspect, because you've seen all the sets that they built for season 2 and for this finale. They're not cheap sets, they're not sort of like cobbled together like it was from classic Doctor Who. They are really good sets, and just jaw dropping, particularly with the special effects as well. That surely it would have been financially better to have had that extra 15 minutes and use those sets to those full potential, for just max out the availability for it. But anyway, that's just me. So everyone's safe. Poppy's safe out of the box, the Zero Room box, and we've wrapped it all up in what sort of half an hour, I think. When there's like still another half an hour, 40 minutes of this season finale to go. And yeah, I love the heartbreaking scene again. Just I wish there were more of this. The scene of the Doctor with Poppy's jacket, and they were folding it and passing it to each other in the TARDIS whilst Ruby was watching. It was getting smaller and smaller and smaller until it disappeared, indicating that Poppy has disappeared, and everyone has forgotten about her. And this is where this season finale definitely changed a whole left turn. Obviously, we've seen evidence that there was an alternative ending to the reality war, and basically they had to change the ending because Ncuti had to go. So I'll quickly talk about this now. So One, I'm glad that they kept it pretty much a surprise as best as possible that we was going to get a regeneration in this episode. I know if you really wanted to dig into the dirt sheets on Reddit or X, you probably would have got some spoilers. But going into this finale, when it was first broadcast or first put on the big screen, I kind of dipped into it, and there was sort of I made it as like predictions. Are we going to see that? And it was getting to be more and more likely, but I didn't know fully. So I wanted to enjoy the ride as much as I possibly could. So when I started to see as many characters make an appearance in Wishworld and the Reality War, with Rogue, Susan Triad, Anita making a surprise appearance, Rose coming back, it was just getting more and more throughout the episode, or at least sort of 10 minutes into the episode, I thought, okay, the 15th Doctor is definitely wearing the red Star Trek uniform, OTC, yeah, OTS uniform, and yeah, he's going to be a goner in this episode. Absolutely gutted that Shooty has left, but I don't blame him one bit. This is where I feel that there should be some leniency for RTD, because he had a lot to sort of deal with and manage with this Disney deal. Because I think when he started this journey, as well as Shooty Gatwa started this journey, I think he was thinking at least 3 years, but Disney settled for two. And I imagine from like the season one, RTD probably thought that, oh yes, season three will get greenlit by Disney, and here we are now. And Shooty probably hung around as long as he possibly could without it damaging his career. And I honestly do not blame him for leaving whatsoever. I do think that if he did stay, or did try to stay in this current situation and being sort of tied down with Doctor Who, it would have damaged it would have hurt his career. And I'm not saying that Doctor Who has damaged his career. I'm not saying that because of the stories or anything. Don't take it out of context. It would have damaged, it would have hurt his career because of the opportunities that was coming his way. Obviously, he's been doing a lot of theatre work, Shooty. He is on the West End again later this year. He's There was stories about him turning down this big multi-million pound or dollar advertising campaign for perfume, I think. And I know that he's a rising actor, and he's going to get opportunities offered to him left, right, and centre. So I think he had to just make a decision and just plunge and go, and say his goodbyes. And as much as they said on Doctor Who Confidential that he said that 2 years was always the plan, absolute BS on that one, because obviously he was on the Graham Norton show doing an interview and saying, yes, can't wait to film for season 3. So yeah, I think he was in a rock and a hard place, and he had to go. There was just, he couldn't stay and wait. And I don't blame him for that. I blame Disney for that. Um, I know Disney are in the right to sort of hang around and make their final decisions until after the spin off, The War Between Land and Sea, is aired in 2026. Fine. That's just the act of business, I suppose. It's a shame, because I think they should have just make a decision now. And I know RTD had to sort of juggle this as well, and you can see that in this finale of everything that he had to sort of spin plates with, not just with Shooty leaving, but in terms of what's going on with Doctor Who, with the plan that he has. There's some that he could have easily have fixed. I think he should have just basically gone on a 2 year plan. I think he should have just done the middleman of a 2 year plan, and then that kind of just circles it all out, rather than going for a 3 year plan, which I feel this is what it was trying to do with, big example, the introduction of Susan, or the return of Susan in the episode The Interstellar Song Contest. So yes, just got a bit of on a tangent there. So obviously we've seen images of the Doctor and Belinda dancing away with Unit, and then there was this big rumor of Susan being sort of in the background, holding Poppy's hand, and Susan saying, "Let's go, mummy," so indicating that Poppy is Susan's mum. I'm glad I didn't go down that road. Really glad I didn't go down that road. But yeah, there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of bad timing that hurt this season, and RTD did the best that he could. There's definitely things he could have done better, in terms, but that I think that's more due to sort of pre-planning. I think really, but in terms of the cards that he had to deal with, he didn't do too bad. I think we should put a bit of leniency on that one. You might think different. Again, let me know in the comments. So anyway, that tangent aside, we have this whole thing of Poppy, and yeah, it was a bit of a nasty scene, really. Poor Ruby getting absolutely ear chewed out by the Doctor, particularly Belinda, saying, "Oh my God, you're being offensive now." With Ruby trying to convince the Doctor that Poppy's real and exists. And yeah, I didn't buy that as much. And particularly that whole sort of weird back scene of like um, Belinda being saved as a child by the Doctor. Where did that come from? And all sorts of sort of bits and bobs like that. And the Kate Stewart line of, "Maybe you are all our children," you know. No, we did the God complex thing with the with the 10th Doctor at the end of the Last of the Time Lords. Let's not go there again, please. But I have to say that when the Doctor sort of figured it out that time has kind of moved slightly that way, that he was going to make the ultimate sacrifice by basically using his regeneration energy to fling it all into the TARDIS to put reality back to where it was. And that's so the Doctor. Absolutely so the Doctor. Yeah, it could have been a neater approach to that, but I like the sentiment all the same. And this is where we get a really nice surprise of the 15th Doctor, of the 13th Doctor meeting up with the 15th Doctor. A really great scene between Ncuti and Jodie Whittaker. Love Jodie. I think she's been a great ambassador for Doctor Who. Say what you want in terms of the writing. Yep, definitely can criticise from her era. But Jodie was brilliant. Didn't miss a step at all. Really thought it was a great conversation to have had. I like the little in joke of, at least it's not him, it's always him, indicating David Tennant. And yeah, it was a nice scene, and definitely the right two doctors for this scene, as in the first black male Doctor with the first female Doctor. Yeah, really sort of, you know, particularly all the toxicity that you see on Facebook and X and other social media outlets, with them being the Doctors in particular. It was a nice moment. However, that scene, instead of the 13th Doctor, should have been Susan. Really should have been Susan. As much as it was a great surprise and great to see Jodie, that scene should have been with Susan. They should have brought Carol Ann Ford back to reshoot and have a similar conversation with the 15th Doctor. Maybe just to sort of in a sort of add to a, "No, you need to find me, grandfather." You know, just add some seeds to what's to come for the Doctor. You know, we had the seed planted with the boss still, and the Doctor saying parking it. But yeah, they should have done a new storyline where the Doctor has to find Susan. Susan is somewhere, and yeah, that needed to be explored. So as much as it was great for Carol Ann Ford to come back, again, massive wasted opportunity. And yeah, that scene should have been with Susan all day long. So after pumping all of his regenerative energy into the TARDIS, yeah, I kind of like the sentiment that things are still not quite right. And that's what I got from this season finale. Is that he wanted to sort of, yeah, the sort of reality was kind of like that, or 0.1. He wanted it to go 0, and I think he's done it as a sort of 0.5 the other way. That's where I feel that we're at the moment with like, you know, Mavity, for example. Um, so yeah, when he did that and then saw Belinda again with Poppy, and it found out that Belinda was always going home for Poppy. Again, didn't buy that. I don't know what I would do different, to be honest. Well, the only difference is we shouldn't have really had, if that was where Belinda's character was going, maybe shouldn't have just had Belinda and just kept Ruby, because that would have just been better. You know, that folding of the jacket could have been Ruby and the Doctor having that conversation, and then the Doctor forgetting, but then Ruby remembering, and you know, it turned out that it could have been Conrad's baby, or you know, it's just one of the things. There could have been something. There could have been another way. There should have been another way, as the Fifth Doctor once said. So yeah, yeah, just a bit gutted about Belinda, but I hope she comes back. I hope she does come back in some shape or form. Um, so yeah, we kind of have our goodbyes, and then we had the cameo-ish appearance of Joy in the Stars, and the Doctor saying, "I don't want to be on my own," when he shuts down the TARDIS. I thought he was going to go into full-on meta, and he's just like going out of the Bad Wolf Studios. That kind of freaked me out a bit, so I'm glad I didn't go full hog on that one. But yeah, we have the 15th Doctor regenerating into Billy Piper. And again, I was surprised. My jaw dropped when I saw that on at the cinema. Again, I know it was in the dirt sheets if you looked, you know, if you looked hard enough for it. But yeah, what do I think of this regeneration? So I still stand by with what I thought of at when I first saw it. I thought it was the shock value, and that's kind of really, it was a social media moment. And I feel that quite a lot of TV shows, sports are doing that now, where it's like you go on YouTube, you go on TikTok, and it's looking for those 5 second shock moments. And you know, we'll worry about the complexities or the plot points of that afterwards. I feel that's kind of where TV and film is. That's the normality of it. Maybe it's right, maybe it's ain't. You decide in the comments. But that's where I felt like where their head was at with the Billy Piper thing. I know RTD probably did that in his mind of, you know, if I can't have a cliffhanger for season 2, let's tag that on and see if that bumps any interest for Disney. And I think in another way that could have worked really well. I know a few previous doctors. I know Peter Davison has talked about it, and sort of like felt that it's a bit sort of clueless. Um, Colin Baker mentioned it was malarkey in good context as well, might I add. It just, it's difficult, isn't it? It's a bit uh 50-50 really. I honestly think I've already put in another video what I would do with Billy Piper and that regeneration scene. Equally, I've seen on X so doing a great sort of story arc of a series of specials of maybe bringing back this kind of like it's maybe like a TARDIS Bad Wolf hybrid of Billy Piper's Doctor, and bringing back the 14th and 15th Doctor, and then with the Daleks, of course, and then merging, so they all have to merge back together, so it kind of unbigenerate, and boom, we get the 17th Doctor. Maybe that's the best way to go about it. Yeah, I'm still sort of on the fence with it until we know how it all plays out. Does it reek a bit of desperation? Yes. But for a video for another day, I think this would have worked if RTD, BBC, and Disney approached Doctor Who slightly differently. I'll save that for another video. Let's summarize the reality war. In short, it's a mess, but it's a glorious mess. Things could have been done so much better, but I do think that timing had a lot to do with how it got presented on screen, with Shooty's departure, Steph Diwali being pregnant, how we dealt with Belinda's character in the end. Obviously, the reshoots, the rewrites, and that was all done in February. So to get that all filmed and cobble it together to make a semi-coherent story, I don't think they did too bad a job. But yeah, there's definitely things that could have done a lot better. Definitely could have been a lot more character-driven moments, a lot more emotional weight to really sort of sell this this season. Because to be honest, season 2 was it was a really strong season of Doctor Who. It's what we wanted, it's what we was hoping for, it's what we got. But it was the finale that did let it down again. Not as bad as season 1, but it was a bit of a letdown. So, is it still a TARDIS rating of 8 out of 10? No, I'm going to give it a TARDIS rating of 7 out of 10. Still had a lot of fun with this episode. Don't get me wrong. There is a lot to enjoy from this episode, particularly Shooter Gatwar's performance, particularly Billy Gibson's performance as well. Special effects was fun. And I did like the cameo appearances, even though on reflection should have been different cameo appearances. But I can't ignore the flaws for this episode and where it's kind of just dragged down season 2 a bit. It has to a certain extent. But is it an absolute disaster? No, absolutely not. I think the best way of looking at it is, yeah, mistakes were made, but let's try and fix them and do better next time. I think that's what we should do with Doctor Who. It does have shades of 80s Who. I've recently watched The Leisure Hive, and I'll go into that again in another video. That's another review. Spoilers to come up to come on the Time Wimey YouTube channel. But yeah, the only way I can summarize the reality war is it's a mess, but it's a glorious mess. And, let's just go back to the drawing board, start again. But on reflection, what do you think to the reality war? Let me know in the comments below. But thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like, share and subscribe. Hit the cloister bell for more notifications. Come say hello and follow me on Facebook and X. And do check out my other fantastic Doctor Who related content on Time Wimey View TikTok. And of course, right here on the Time Wimey View YouTube channel. And as a good doctor once said, including me, I love you all.